And we're live. Hey guys, happy Monday. As usual, we have problems. It's okay. Welcome to Whiskey, Wine, and Writing. I'm your host, Natasha.
And I'm your other host, Nikki. And tonight we have a great guest for you. It's Renni Browne, the awesome editor and author of Self-Editing for Fiction Writers. And we are so happy to have you on here, Renni. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
I certainly can, but first thing I'm going to do is say I'm the co-author, not the author.
Co-author, sorry.
Co-author.
I have a wonderful co-author who makes creative contributions, but what, God bless him, what he did was also he turned Self-Editing for Fiction Writers into a self-help book, which I couldn't have done in a million years. My brain does not work like that. And that's one reason it helps so many writers. I know, because I get fan mail. I get fan mail all the time about the book, and I love it.
It's an amazing
I've been a fiction editor for over 50 years, 54 and change, and what I do now is still edit novels, sometimes nonfiction. I've got nothing against it. I just love stories.
Is there a particular kind of fiction you like? Is it like literary fiction? Do you prefer romance? Historical, westerns?
If it's well written, there isn't any kind I don't like. I mean, I edit romance and science fiction. I love mysteries. I love literary fiction. I love Southern fiction, as you can perhaps tell from the way I talk. I'm a Southerner. I live here in Asheville, North Carolina, where there are a lot of writers.
I live in Boone, North Carolina. We're neighbors.
Okay. And I lived in Manhattan for many years, where I was the youngest female senior editor, except for ones who did cookbooks and mysteries. I was the youngest female senior editor for a long time. And I just came back from a trip to New York, as a matter of fact. I miss New York, but one thing I like about Asheville, North Carolina, is that it reminds me a little bit of New York. It's very eclectic. You've got people with every opinion in the world, and I'm talking about the downtown mainly. You're going to have to talk among yourselves for a second, because I have to go get a power pole.
No problem.
Don't tell them how wonderful I am.
So guys, if you are just tuning in, we do have the author of, co-author of Self-Editing for Fiction Writers, Renni Browne. Her co-author is Dave King. This is an amazing book. I've had it for years, and it's got great things to do on point of view, beats, proportion, point of views. I think I said that, characterization, dialogue. Nikki would love the chapter on dialogue.
I honestly can't wait to get this book, because you've been talking it up to me forever, and I'm so ready to read it. Plus, I'm so excited she lives in Asheville. Represent North Carolina.
I know. You could like drive over there and just get an autograph, and I'd be jealous, right? Because she's so much fun. And yeah, so if you guys haven't, this has been around for a while. I think it originally came out in the 90s. I'm looking now, because I have the second edition. I don't even have the first edition. I have the second edition. And I just remember when I glanced through, because I don't know if people are like me, and when you're at a bookstore and you're looking at reference books, I don't just pick a reference book off the shelf and say, oh, hey, this looks good. Like, I skim through just about every chapter, and I also like to look at the exercises. And there's some really fun exercises in this, and it really helps to make you think about your stories and your characters, and helps you flesh them out, and it helps you edit your novel well enough so that, you know, when you send it to your critique group or your beta readers, it's at that stage that it's ready, you know, for the parts you can't see yourself because you just looked at it for too long. And Rennie has returned.
I have returned.
I wish I could have been to Asheville tonight. We could have just done this together.
I know, that would have been insane. I didn't realize she was from Asheville, but if you guys could have done it like in the same room, that would have been amazing.
I am in our court.
Suzanne says New York City pride. She's from New York, so she loves hearing about it.
Of course she does. Of course she does.
And Elle Evans says she has the second edition too. It's a great book.
One of the things that's best about the second edition, and I give Dave a lot of credit for this, my co-author, the two of us decided that we needed to do proportion is so important. And we decided that we needed to do something different and bigger with the subject of proportion, because I don't know if there's anything more important. It depends on how much attention you give to something. Is of course how much attention the reader is going to pay to it. And we approached proportion in a whole different way in the second edition. So if you have the first edition, I hate to say it, but you really need to get the second edition. You're going to get a lot of extras, and the main extra you're going to get is a chapter on proportion.
That would be chapter 4 on proportion. So let's talk about a little bit about proportion. What in fiction, what do you mean by proportion for fiction?
Oh, all right. It's a complicated issue. In fact, of all the self-editing points, the one that's the hardest to talk about on a show like this is proportion. But I can say generally, the proportion isn't just the amount of words you use in something. It's also the intensity and the importance you give it. So keep in mind that what comes off as most important in your story really needs to be what's most important in your story. That sounds very, very obvious, but it isn't. It often seems that way to you and doesn't seem that way to the reader. And that's part of the overall thing that I think gets writers into the most trouble, which is that they spend so much time thinking, writers tend to spend so much time thinking about their sentences, the way they're putting their words together, and they don't spend enough time thinking about how things are going to affect the reader. And that's why proportion is so often out of whack. And it just is. It's out of whack. You've got all this interest fomenting about the end. And the end is really there to forge a connection between two parts of the plot. She herself as a character isn't that important. And if she's given a great deal of intensity,
uh-oh, I think the computer froze.
This is just so fascinating, you know, in general.
It is.
Hanging on her every word. Like, I think, you know, as writers, one of the hardest things is to self-edit because you're so close to your story. So once you're able to learn that skill, it like opens up new doors.
And I think that can be attributed back to when Rachel Kane was talking about the muscle memory thing. The more you practice the things in the self-editing book, the more you learn about them, and the more you learn how to utilize the tools to either read them out or incorporate them in, I think the easier it's going to become, and it's just going to become reflexive as you write.
Totally.
So, and I think Rennie is setting up her laptop. I'm not sure. She keeps freezing up a little bit. So, as she was saying before, if you have the first edition, so sorry, you have to go out and get the second edition for the chapter on proportions. So,
you want to talk about our special giveaway today?
Oh, right. Thank you so much for reminding me. Guys, first of all, I just got back from RT, and I'm exhausted. So forgive me if I'm a little out of it tonight. But yes, we do have 5 Amazon. I'm sorry, guys. It's only Amazon Kindle digital giveaways. It is on the blog, Whiskey Wine Writing, under the webcast post. So you can go there, click on that. It's a raffle copter giveaway, so it's strictly random who wins. Just, you know, tweet or follow or whatever we gave you for the options. Just go through that, and the more you do, the more chances you have to win. And we will be picking 5 winners. I believe it closes Friday at midnight, so Saturday we will pick, hopefully Saturday, we will pick the winners. Weekends are hard. I should have thought that through more. But we'll pick the winners, and we'll get the information to Rennie, and then we will have them gift you the digital copies through Amazon. And Rennie is still kind of frozen. I think she'll be right back. So, per usual, guys, Hangouts hates us, per usual. Just how it is. Sorry.
Yeah. That's how you know it's an authentic show, though, so at least we don't pretend.
Well, we love that you love us anyways. So, besides the proportion, there are, let me see, I don't remember how many chapters, because I'm not the person who reads straight through this kind of book. I bounce around. Like, as I realize I'm having a hard time with something, I don't read generally them straight through, but I have been through the whole thing. I mean, I have folds and highlights like all throughout this thing. I think there are, how many chapters? So there are 12 chapters. Between show and tell, characterization, exposition, point of view, proportion, dialogue mechanics, see how it sounds, interior monologue, easy beats, breaking up is easy to do, once is usually enough, sophistication, and voice. So you've pretty much got the entire, mechanics of the novel itself within this book. So you get to learn different ways to edit and different ways to clean it up so that it works for your story.
That's awesome. I think it makes me think about when I first wrote my first book, like a couple years ago, and I had no idea about self-editing, and was like, I wrote my first draft, time to query. And, that whole harsh realization, I wish I had a book like this. And if you're watching this for the first time and you're like, wow, I didn't know a book like this existed, you should totally go out for that book. Get the free one through the Rafflecopter if you're lucky, or go out and buy it anyway, because it is just such a wealth of knowledge. I have so many friends who talk about this book all the time.
Yes, I mean, I that's what inspired me, because I had the book and everybody talks about the book, so I decided to reach out to Rennie and see if she would come on the show, and of course she's amazing, so she said yes, and hopefully we can resolve the technical difficulties and she'll be able to get back in, because I love her accent too. Her accent is just amazing. I have a thing for accents. I really do. I love them. They're so calming and pretty, and I love them. And she has such a wealth of knowledge from her history and experience that, people are definitely going to benefit from, getting advice from her.
Totally.
So,
well,
go ahead.
While we wait, I was wondering if you wanted to tell a little bit about RT, because I know everyone's dying to know since they followed your Twitter, and you mentioned that you might share more later and maybe tell people about that.
Well, RT was an experience. I was at Leatrice McKinney did a wonderful post about your conference survival guide, and even then, I was still woefully unprepared. Like, you can hear about it all you want, but when you go there, it's just insanity. It is a whirlwind. Oh my God, it's amazing. You meet so many wonderful people, and you get to hear so many different stories, and you have so many stories to come home with. You will, and my motto for RT is nothing ever goes smooth, at least not for me. I was consistently probably making an ass out of myself, but it was fun, and
everyone loves you.
Well, you make great connections and all this other wonderful stuff. So I know that hopefully, if all goes well, I'm not sure which day. It's either going to be Wednesday or Thursday, that myself, Leatrice McKinney, and Brenda Drake are talking about perhaps doing an episode where we just talk about RT, give the experiences and how much fun RT15 was. And if you do follow me on Twitter at Rollerson Writes, it's right there for you. You can scroll back and see the pictures. We went to a different hotel for dinner, and the food was phenomenal. So if you are in Dallas and you have a chance, go over to the Omni, hit up the Texas Spice, make sure that Patrick is your server and that Jan is your chef, because they are amazing. The food was exquisite and divine. And the Omni was in our hotel. Me personally, I was not a fan of the food at the hotel we were staying at. But we went over to the Omni, which was like 5 minutes away, and the food was just like I told them, you guys just need to put a cot in the back for when we come here. We will gladly stay in the kitchen room just as long as we can eat here. It was just, it's really good food there. And you just, it's an experience. It's not a vacation. Was that you?
I have no idea what that was.
We had a random
This today, so yay for that.
No, it does. It really does. It's okay. I thought I wasn't even going to be able to get on here because it was like, oh, okay, we have updates again. Suzanne says, you've obviously never heard mine. Hashtag obnoxious New Yorker. No. I'm loud. You can ask Brenda. You can ask Elle. You can ask anybody who's there. I was loud. I talked fast, and I was insane. It's okay. But if you guys haven't followed Suzanne Sameen is our social media specialist. She does all the tweets you've been seeing going out. So all those wonderful prompts and the questions, this is all her crazy mind at work. So make sure you give her a follow, which is at Suzanne Sameen, S-A-M-I-N. We were saying salmon first. We were kind of bad.
Well, we're terrible. But she is awesome, and we love her crazy mind and her uniqueness and her awesomeness, and she's like my new best friend, so go follow her.
Yes, she is divine. I love her. But no, conferences are not vacations. I swear, I probably got less than 6 hours of sleep every night. And it was really funny because, like, towards the end of it, I was waking up with, like, a very hoarse voice. And I'm like, I know I talk a lot, but I don't understand why I'm losing my voice. And then I realized, oh, right. I come from, like, the most humid freaking climate in the U.S., and I'm going over to Texas. So to me, it's very dry. Like, my lips were chapped. I'd wake up in the middle of the night with everything, like my mouth being dry. I'm like, oh, I'm losing my voice because my throat is dry. I need to hydrate. And I did. Once I had coffee and water, I was fine. And when I got up this morning, my voice was totally fine. But every time I woke up in Dallas, I had no voice, including when I got to meet my agent, who's amazing, by the way, guys. Amazing. If you get the chance to meet your agent in person, do it. They're awesome.
So, guys, as you can see, we're going to have, like, the coolest debriefing of RT sometime this week. We're going to keep you on your toes. You don't know when exactly. Follow us on Twitter, and it's going to be a great show. I can't wait to watch it. I'm not going to lie.
It's going to be so much fun. And if you guys don't know, Brenda Drake actually did a pitch panel while we were at RT. And as you know, Brenda is doing the Pitch Wars, which is coming up. Nikki and I are both mentors, which will be fun and exciting, and we can't wait for it. It's going to be interesting. So Brenda will be on here talking, and if you were at RT, you would have definitely benefited from her pitch panel, and because Louise Fury and, oh my gosh, I forgot her name. Ray was there, and a bunch of other people. I think there were like 5 people on the panel, and Liz from Entangled, the owner of Entangled, she was there, and they were going through and they were giving advice on the pitches and the queries and everything like that. So it's always great to get feedback. So if you were there and you listened, make sure you take the advice they gave and put it to good use, because a lot of it was really good advice.
Totally. I think that's like the coolest part about the writer community is how much feedback is out there at your fingertips. Everyone's willing to help you, whether it's through a pitch contest or through just CP and beta reader groups and writer groups online. And sometimes it's hard to get feedback. It really, really is. But it's practice as well, because let's be honest, this industry is the biggest rejection industry ever. So...
yeah, I mean, and it's been said by, multiple agents, multiple publishers. You'll basically have your heart ripped out and stomped on like every other day in this industry. And if you don't have a thick skin, you're not going to be able to handle it, because it is so subjective. And it's not just the subjectivity, it's timing, it's what's selling, it's what's trending up and what's trending down, and a lot of these things come into play when you're writing, when people are looking to buy your book, when people are looking to be your agent, and things along those lines. It's just a lot of different things come into play.
So have we heard from Rennie?
No, I'm going to send her an email actually right now and see what is going on.
So we apologize, guys, for the technical difficulties, but if you were on for the first part, you could tell that she is the most amazing wealth of knowledge
she's
ever.
So sweet. Actually, let me grab the link again to resend her.
So we're going to get her back on in no time, and get your questions ready, because this is an editor who's been editing for 54 years. That's incredible. And she's here to answer your questions tonight. So
that's experience right there. It's like I am just in awe of her amazing history of this, of editing. She said in her library, she has every book she ever, which if you were watching, you could see behind her all the books. And it was like, really? Those are all, I mean, there were mounds of books. She was like, I think I have them all. I don't know if I have enough room, but yeah.
Like,
so,
what a cool just life in general, you know? Like, I can't even imagine that.
yeah. So, there we go. This. All right, I just sent her another invite, and hopefully we're going to be able to get her back in. Guys, seriously, I have been trying so hard. If you are a techie and you know of something better than Hangouts to use that would give us the live show, that we would love that so much for that information. So if anybody out there is an awesome video person, let us know. We're going silent, Nikki. This is not good.
I apologize, guys. I've been a little bit like, woo, lately. I was telling Tosh before the show, you know how I've been like prepping for Shrek the Musical auditions? Well, I don't know what it is, but I've just been under the weather and I bombed them completely. But it's okay because I didn't cry like my 16-year-old self totally would have.
I still think you did an amazing job. I still think you were better than you thought. And if you were sick, you can't really help that. I mean, especially if that affected your voice because you weren't feeling well. That happens. I mean, that's like a humanity factor thing that you can't.
I would have rather stood in front of these people naked than do the audition that I had. It was really, I got the butt sweats, people. And I don't know if you've experienced the butt sweats. This was my first time, but it's very, very weird. And I wanted to be like, sorry guys, I'm having a seizure right now. Let me just drive myself to the hospital and come back and audition for you later. That's how this audition went. And you know, it's like, you know, it's bad when you walk out and the people in the hallway who can hear your audition go, you survived. So next time, guys. Next time.
Well, while we wait for Rennie, let's go a little bit into her book. In the first chapter in Show and Tell, it lets you know what a scene is. And I think that people sometimes think that scenes are attributed to chapters, that they're one and the same, and they're not. You can have multiple scenes within a chapter. So once you have the scene end, don't change point of views within a scene. You can't do that, but you can change point of views within a chapter if you're changing your scenes. If you finish one scene and you move into another scene, it is okay to change your point of view. But you have to make sure that you've ended one scene and moved into another. Otherwise, it doesn't work.
Yeah, because then it's just like an awkward cliffhanger in the middle of the action, and it's hard to follow along.
Right, and what's great about Rennie's book is she gives you the descriptions, like, right exactly on what it is. She's like, what exactly makes a scene? And it takes place in real time. So I kind of think that, you know, settings have, or scenes have settings, and specific locations the readers can picture. So as this is happening, once this certain thing ends, that's basically when your scene ends and you can move into the next one. So that's one of the great things you will learn in this book is what a scene is, where it begins, where it ends. Rennie's coming back in. I am so excited.
Hi, Rennie.
We had a power outage.
Oh my goodness. Are you storming there?
I had to just sit in the dark. There was no electricity at all. And I knew it wouldn't last long because they never do, but they don't.
Well, welcome back.
I'm so sorry for all the people who were tuned in, but you two ladies are so intelligent and funny and pretty. I'm sure they weren't bored while I was gone.
Oh, well, thank you. We are so glad to have you back. We were actually just talking about show and tell and scenes and what scenes were and how people can benefit from learning about what scenes are from your book.
Well, I tell you, it's true that show versus tell, show don't tell is the most often repeated advice for writers. But sometimes telling is a really good idea. I'm editing a novel right now. Now, first of all, I want to say it has brilliant scenes. It has action scenes. It has dialogue scenes. But the author, who is a wonderful narrator, has a lot of scenes where she covers a lot of territory very quickly because it's narrated instead of written into scenes.
Mhm.
And if she didn't do that, I'm not sure any reader would live long enough to finish the novel, because it's generations. Another thing is she has a way of writing narration that's very interesting. She often throws in, and I've encouraged her to do this. One reason she's doing it so much is because the last time around I suggested it. But she throws into these long blocks of narration a little dialogue exchange between two of the characters. Or she throws in a little scene that's startling and continues right on with the narration. It is in a narration block, but it breaks up the block.
Right.
The reason long narrative blocks are not such a good idea is because they look, I think I might even have used this word, which isn't really a word in self-editing for fiction writers, they look lectury. They look as though you're being lectured.
Oh, lecture. Okay.
Yeah, and you're not. I mean, you're often being told absolutely fascinating things. But even fascinating things, this is today's reader. This is not last century's reader. I mean, this is not the 19th century reader. 19th century readers loved long blocks of narration. And when I go back and read a Henry James novel, I'm not upset by all the long narrative blocks at all, because my brain goes into the 19th century mode. But today's reader, conditioned by television, conditioned by radio, conditioned by modern fiction, they just don't want to put up with long blocks of narrative summary. They know what they want. They want it now, and they want it fast. Now, if you're a good enough writer, you have a lot more leeway, because you've got the prose that is acting as an angling hook. But most of the writers who come to us, and in fact most writers who get published, are not great writers. They're good writers, but they're not great writers. And so they're well advised to make sure that even if they have plenty of narrative summary, they also have plenty of scenes. And another thing about scenes involve the reader immediately and definitely in what's going on. Scenes make the reader a part of the story. Narration lets readers know what's going on, informs readers about what's going on. It can do that with great charm. It can do that with great distinction. That it's always letting the reader know what's going on instead of making the reader a part of what's going on.
So narration lets one know, and then the scenes pull the reader in real time.
Readers make you a part of it. I mean, scenes make you a part of it.
So it's that, emotional connection with the characters. Is that what you would say?
Well, I think it's certainly, actually, you may become more emotionally connected with the characters through a narrative summary, but you won't be a part of what that character is doing as much as you will in the scene. You may or may not be more a part of what that character is thinking in narrative summary, though. It depends. I mean, these are fun, these are not hard and fast. But in general, I would say, certainly to the beginning writer, if you're going to err on one side or the other, have too many scenes.
That is good advice.
All right, that is very good advice. And I think also within the book, if I can remember and find it, you talk about beats and how beats can help to drive that scene, give that scene that little bit of extra oomph.
Well, without them, a dialogue scene will drive the reader nuts because it'll be nonstop dialogue.
Mm-hmm.
Also, the beats are just stage business. I mean, if you're watching a play, you don't just hear the lines the characters say. The characters also do things. You know, they walk around, they pull at their hair, they smoke cigarettes, or they tell each other not to smoke cigarettes and then sneak one. They do things. So beats are just the little things that happen in a dialogue scene that are not dialogue. Now, the biggest problems my authors have with beats is thinking of good ones. They really tear their hair out over this. They write me despairing emails about this. I can't think of anything good for Wolfgang to do in the scene with Carolyn. The way to come up with good beats is just to be observant and watch. And of course, as a writer, you should always have a notebook with you, or you should have a smartphone and speak into it. Make note of what you observe people doing. Little things, little ticks, little movements they make. Okay, so they shrug. How do they shrug? There are about 50 different kinds of shrugs. Notice what people do. Be observant. Be an observer of human nature. And observe the physical things that people do when they're not talking. Or when two people are talking to each other, instead of listening to what they're saying, watch what they're doing in between the dialogue. You'll have so many beats, you would be able to sell them to other writers. I'm not kidding. People just move around all the time. And then there's another thing. There's different ways that people talk. And it's also a beat if, for example, someone tells you to do something, but they say it as though they have absolutely no expectation whatsoever that you're actually going to do it. And if you make a note of that in the dialogue scene, that's a beat. So it doesn't actually have to be an action.
Rennie, I'm going to ask you to pull the back of your laptop a little bit more towards you because it looks like it went back. There we go. We only had like a little bit from your chin up, and then you kept going out. I wanted to be able to see your beautiful face, so there we go.
I don't know it's awfully beautiful 76, but I used to be awfully pretty.
Oh, you're still beautiful. You're still beautiful.
Said modestly.
But so you think observing people is the best way for people to learn beats? So are beats like only the physical things people do, or could you maybe put in a little bit of interior monologue at the end of the dialogue tag?
Well, interior monologue isn't a beat. It's a perfectly legitimate way to break up a dialogue scene.
Okay. So interior monologue is different, but it's still a good
the character says a line, and then you write, she wasn't sure that was true. Okay. But George needed to hear it anyway. That's not a beat, but it does break up the dialogue.
No, I loved what you said about how there's 50 ways to shrug, so you shouldn't just say shrug. I was wondering, a few of my author friends in a writer group were recently talking about cliched phrases that we accidentally use way too much in those kind of action tags. Do you have any pet peeve cliches that you can't stand when you read?
I find that writers today use fewer cliches than they ever did. I don't know why, but they really, or maybe this is just the manuscripts that get to me. I don't know, but, and sometimes a writer will use a cliche deliberately because it gets across so much in a few words, and they don't want to write a whole bunch of words. They want to get it over with fast. I mean, Erica John told me that once. She said that she occasionally would use a cliche just to save her a lot of ink. And I think that, you know, it wasn't a terrible cliche by any means, but I understood why she said that. But I don't think, certainly cliches are not something I would advise writers to do. I just don't think they're as big a problem for writers today as they used to be.
I think we also have, I mean, I know every generation has slang, but it just seems like we have new slang like every 6 months. So
don't you think that's a good thing?
I do, but sometimes I get confused. I'm like, wait, what? Like, okay, twerking was booty dancing to me. So it's like, okay. So sometimes I know we're coming up with new words and it's good to have. So I think that's kind of why we always find a new description or a new slang word for what has already been. So I think it's constantly evolving.
I try to get writers to limit slang to a character who really wouldn't say it any other way.
Yeah.
You don't want to make your writers feel dumb.
I will say, I think I finally, I finally decided that I'm getting old because one of my I was editing something for a client of mine, and the phrase or word was fleek, and I have no idea what that meant. And I started Googling. I'm like, what does fleek mean?
What does fleek mean? I don't know what fleek means either.
I don't remember anymore, but it was something like, I guess, fly. Though that's slang as well. So I guess maybe really cool.
How are you spelling that?
Fleek. It really threw me for a loop.
Fleek.
Fleek.
Never heard it.
Yeah, it really. And I was editing at 1 a.m. I was like, what does this word mean?
Viewers, can somebody tell us what fleek is, please? You can tweet it to us at you can use our hashtag WWWriting. Let us know what fleek is. Remember, we are interviewing the most awesome Renni Browne. So if you have any questions regarding editing, she has been doing this for how long again?
54 years.
54 years. She's got some good tips, some good tricks, so bring out your editing questions. She's happy to answer them. And we do have a giveaway for self-editing for fiction writers. If you don't already have a copy, even if you have your first edition, we've been told you need to get the second edition because it has the chapter on proportions. But we're giving away 5 Amazon Kindle copies. It's over on our blog, whiskeyWineWriting.com. Go over there, enter into the Rafflecopter giveaway. Hopefully you will win because this book really does help. So.
I also think that if you are going to hire an independent editor, whether it's the editorial department or an individual or whatever, which many writers do, the better you are at self-editing, the less you're going to need the independent editor you hire, so the less it's going to cost you. So there's a very practical reason to get good at self-editing. But the best reason to get good at it is because you become a better editor, a better writer. And that's what it's all about. Becoming a better writer. A better self-editor equals a better writer.
Awesome. I think that's like amazing advice right there. I really do. You know, that the better you learn to edit, the better you learn to write. Because I think as you learn to edit, that means you're learning more about the mechanics. So you're incorporating more of the creativity with the mechanics to weave it all together to make a great book.
Let me give you a good example. I'm editing a mystery right now. The author has published all kinds of nonfiction books and 3 previous supernatural thrillers. But this is one. And I suggested to him that he take out something so that the reader could put it together, or the readers could put it together for themselves. And what I said was that whenever readers do this, they become more deeply involved in the story. For a very good reason. They just invested a little piece of themselves in it. And so naturally they're more deeply involved. Because we're all very ego-oriented. If we put something of ourselves in a story, we can. And readers are smart. They're quite capable of putting things together and figuring things out. And not only that, but they just love doing that. Now, and writers, especially beginning writers, love to readers, love to make things readers, love to put it all together for the readers. And that's exactly what they're doing. Because they're depriving the reader of that opportunity to put it together for themselves. Now, of course, you can carry this too far. You can carry it so far that the reader has no idea what's going on. Obviously, that's not a good idea. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about letting the reader see the cues, and it doesn't have to be in a mystery. It may be in a literary novel. It may be in any kind of story. But letting the reader put this together and that together and, oh, that is a wonderful experience for a reader. Think about how much you enjoyed yourself. Writers, think about how much you enjoyed that yourself, and make sure you don't deprive your readers of that pleasure.
That's awesome. We have a question for you from L. Evans, who is at Runaway Tale on Twitter, and she is asking, is it better to make multiple passes through a manuscript looking for different editing issues?
I think it depends somewhat on the writer, but generally speaking, I would say it's better to go through several times looking for what shows up. I mean, looking at what shows up.
So, so you're saying if you notice something on the first pass, then go for it. Don't just look for one specific. Like, don't go through and worry about the dialogue and then.
I do think that one pass for the sake of dialogue is a good idea. If you go through and read all of your dialogue aloud, you're going to and keep that focus on dialogue. That is a good idea for many writers. But generally speaking, if you're just looking for one thing, I mean, first of all, you're going to have to read it so many times. I mean, that would be exhausting, I would think, and it might end you up with a distaste for your own work. Which would be a shame.
Yeah, I know that feeling.
Oh, man. When you're editing, yeah.
You want to stay in love with your own work. Another thing that isn't in my book, I don't think, but it's a very good idea. If you start feeling snarl, put it aside for a couple weeks. You would be amazed at how much freshness it gives you just that short break. Go work on your.
See, I'm the person who has a hard time putting it aside until I'm done editing. I'm like, nope, we're going through this. I'm doing it again. I'm doing it again. But I never got like sick of my manuscript when I edited. But I also think that I had time between, because when I give it to somebody to edit, like if I give it to my CP partners, I won't look at it until I get that feedback, because then I'm changing what I have them look at. So their feedback might be null and void because I changed something that they're giving me feedback on. So I think once you give it to your critique partners, it's best to leave it alone so that you can see what they think of it and then go in and change it.
Leaving it alone is practically impossible for a lot of writers, and I understand that.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
It's not a bad idea to have another novel going. It's not a bad idea to have a short story going while you're writing a novel, because there's so much waiting. There's so much waiting. The road to sanity is to have another novel going while you're waiting after you finish the first one. I mean, even if you self-publish, which a lot of our writers are choosing to do now because they don't like the mess that publishing seems to be in at the moment. Even if you self-publish, and that happens fast, you're waiting to see how many copies left. What are people saying? You know, there's waiting any way you look at it, and it helps so much if, while you're waiting, you've got another story you're excited about that's in some stage or other.
That is great advice. That's actually Agent is saying the same thing the other day. So it's nice even editors think that too.
Yeah, that's lovely.
So, regarding interior monologue, I know you have a chapter for it, and it's a good chapter. But how does one know when interior monologue is too much? Like, sometimes you'll have two characters talking, and you'll stop, and you'll have the character go into interior monologue. Now, some people may put a sentence, and some people may put 2 paragraphs. How do you know when it's too much and it slows down the pacing?
when it seems like it's slowing down the pacing.
I answered my own question.
Answer.
It depends so much on the character. It depends so much on how interesting that character's thoughts are. It depends a lot on what that character is thinking about.
So
You know, I have a wonderful character in a novel I edited a few weeks ago that an agent has fallen in love with. And she says she has such an interesting angle of approach mentally. And she does. She's the kind of character who could be thinking about the grocery store and what's in it, would come out with a slightly comic, almost sarcastic little edge to it. She could think about anything that would be interesting. And I have another character in the same book who's very, very intelligent, but who never has very interesting thoughts. So she does something incredibly interesting. She kills her boyfriend. But she does not have, well, I mean, some guilty to the boyfriend. This is not something we can go around ordinarily doing. She doesn't have interesting thoughts. So it's just, you can't really answer that question because it depends so much on the quality of the mind of the character, the content of the interior monologue. But I would say, if in doubt, don't. I mean, if you think do I need this extra paragraph? No. If you have to question it, if you're in doubt about it, don't put it in.
Awesome. We do have another question from Brick, who is at West Editor 1. He said, would James A. Michener, I'm so sorry if I said that wrong, make it through the 3-chapter query today? I'm not sure who James A. Michener is. Rennie, do you have any idea?
Yeah.
Okay, who's that?
He did an awful lot of best-selling novels. Yeah, one of the ones who sold the best was called Hawaii. But he wrote a whole bunch of them. And, but maybe the first 3 chapters is not as odd-sounding. It's not as odd as it sounds. I'm going, you know, one thing I think that a book that me do is publishing it, maybe 2 chapters up, and on some of our sites. And if you can't absolutely hook your reader in 3 chapters, your novel, however good it is not for that reader. I think that's true generally of 1 chapter, but not always. Some novels take a little longer to, you know, to expose what they're about. Look at Life After Life. Atkinson, she just wrote Life After Life. Everybody's talking about it. In the first chapter, a character kills Hitler. And it takes her a few chapters before you realize that the same character was born over and over. And there's no way to establish the end of that. So it depends.
You, I believe you mentioned, correct me if I'm wrong, that it's best not to start off with a narrative monologue, like a narrative scene within the book. It's best to start off with some kind of action scene or dialogue scene within a novel.
Not necessarily. I didn't say that. I did say that you certainly want to start off with something happening, but it doesn't have to be a scene. It depends, of course, also on the kind of book you're writing. There's some kinds of books you write that you definitely want to start off with a scene. You want to start off with dialogue or action, plus a scene that just so the reader feels they're opening in the middle of something. There are kinds of novels where that's a very good idea. One of the things I love to do in my work is that the novel is different. And every character is different and every author is different, so I never get
It's very hard, I would think, to get bored as an editor who gets to be involved in so many worlds and so many dynamic stories, and just even meeting the authors who have to have stories behind their stories of how they came up with the concepts and why they wanted to write it.
They do. And I get to meet them all now because of the internet. I mean, I get to meet them in person, but I get to meet them online, and I get to go to their Facebook pages. Lots of times I send me stories about their dogs and their kids. And so I have a huge circle of people around the world.
Do you have a favorite book you've edited, or do you just love them all?
You came through with every word on top of the word. You have to say that again. We don't have the best reception in the world here.
I said, do you have a favorite book you've edited, or do you just love them all?
Oh, that's too hard. I mean,
We probably give her the hardest question ever.
Way over 1,000 books. One of the ones I enjoyed the most, it was the first novel that got on the Times bestseller list, was Still Missing by Chevy Stevens. St. Martin's publishes her. She's a Canadian, but in the United States she published by St. Martin's. I love working with her on that first one. I've worked with her on every one since then too. But there's a novel that an agent is looking at now. It's called Coney Island Book of the Dead, and it's by an author named Sheila Martin. And the heroine is an 11-year-old girl in the Coney Island. And it's illustrated, but it's not a children's book. Or maybe it is. I don't know. It's so unusual and such a delight that it's a very, very favorite book of mine. But I have so many favorites. I'm a real fan. When something turns out just the way I hoped it would, I'm such a I also really love a book by John Way called The Virus Gene, which is the most unusual thriller I've ever edited. And an agent has taken that on just recently.
Oh, that's awesome.
But when I finish editing a book that I love, and it goes out into the world, I kind of have postpartum depression. I miss it.
But yeah, well, I do have a quick question here. How did you get into the editing business? Did you know that's what you wanted to do? Did you kind of just fall into it? I mean, how did you get into the business?
And I told the editor that I wanted to be an editor, and he said, well, you don't have any experience other than having co-written a novel. He said, you don't have any experience, but I have an opening for a copywriter and editor in my advertising department, so you can have that job. So for $65 a week, this was in 1962, I graduated in 1961. For $65 a week, I edited and sometimes wrote a copy, and my boss fired me. He said, you're a born editor. Go and take any editorial job you can find, and whenever you've learned everything you can there, quit. And this is how, 5 years later, I was having lunch with Harry Bragg, who replaced Maxwell Perkins as Ernest Hemingway's editor at Scribner's. And he looked at my and said, did you really have all these jobs in 5 years? And I said, no, I left 2 off. And I became an editor at Scribner's. And the rest is history.
Wow, that's just awesome. Besides everybody else's stories that you've edited, you just have your own amazing stories, and you're just surrounded and enveloped by them, and it's like, you're like the guru. I bow down to you. You're amazing.
Well, it wasn't easy during those 5 years. You wouldn't believe it. I was fiction editor for Women's Day for a few months. I was I worked for National Review. I worked for a leftist magazine called Overseas. I worked for, I mean, I can't even remember most of them, but I did exactly what my first boss told me. Whenever I thought I'd learned everything I could, I quit. So I learned how to assess hardcover books for paperback publishers. I learned all this stuff, and it was great fun being in New York. I don't know. I mean, ended up living in New York from 1961 to 1991, I guess. Gee, that's a long time. But all the rest of the time I've been in the South.
Wow.
That is awesome.
So we are actually at the end of the hour. Rennie, is there anything we didn't touch base on, anything you wanted to talk about that we didn't get a chance to?
Well, just one thing. It's so obvious, but all of you writers out there, read good fiction. Read good contemporary fiction, but read good 19th century fiction. Read good stuff. And your own stuff will be better.
That, I think, is fabulous advice, Rennie.
And what's fun in reading? What in the world is more fun?
I know I came home with about like 50 books from the convention I just went to, and it was my first convention, so I was woefully unprepared for how many books I was going to bring home. So I was not ready for that. But Nikki, is there anything that you would like to say before we head off for the night?
Sure. So, guys, I don't know if you noticed, but we are going to end Season 2 with this amazing episode. We're having next week for Memorial Day, we're taking off, and Season 3 starts June 1st. And actually, I'm going to leave Whiskey, Wine, and Writing for Season 2 and come back as the guest with Brenda for Season 3. But, yeah, the whole new Whiskey, Wine, and Writing is really exciting, and E.L. Wicker is going to come in with Tasha.
Yeah, we're going to miss Nikki, though. There's a lot going on for all of us, and she's been such an amazing co-host, and I'm going to miss her to pieces. And she will be back guest hosting. Like, we have stuff lined up and all that good stuff. So you're not going to have Nikki withdrawals or anything, we promise. So
I'll still be involved in the writer community. So, tweet me at Nikki_Roberti. My side, I'm around. I'm happy to talk about queries and whatever. But, yeah, so... But
yes, E.L. Wicker, she will join us for the Season 1 episode, or Season 3 first episode, where we will have Nikki and Brenda as guest stars, and we will talk about writer's voice, right?
Yes, because that's
in 2 weeks.
Yes, and Brenda and I are teaming up, and it's going to be fantastic, and there's a lot of great mentors on there, so you should make sure you enter.
Yes, definitely. And I do want to remind everybody, we have the giveaway going until Friday midnight for 5 copies of this wonderful book, Self-Editing for Fiction Writers by Renni Browne. And we will announce the winners Saturday or Sunday, hopefully Saturday, if I remember. But this weekend, we will announce the winners. We will get the information ready, and they will gift it to you through Amazon. So it is Kindle only, guys. But it is an amazing, worthwhile book to have. It will help you so much you have no idea. And I want to, again, thank you so much, Rennie, for being here. It has been a wonderful, just mind-blowing time having you here and hearing all your wisdom and information. And, oh, it's amazing.
You definitely enjoyed it.
Good questions. I enjoyed it.
Thank you so much. So, guys, we went a little over, but we started a little late, so that's how it goes. It's what happens when we're live. We never know what's going to happen. So, thank you all so much for joining us, and we will be back in 2 weeks for Season 3 of Whiskey, Wine, and Writing. So, you guys have a good time until then, and we'll see you all around. Bye. Oh, yeah, remember, write creatively, drink responsibly, and we'll see you in 2 weeks. Bye, guys.
Good night.